Hello all. Welcome back to another helpful hint from Ms. Kirsch. Today's topic is solving story problems accurately and efficiently. So one of the first things that you need to realize when you come across a story problem, whether in the classroom or for homework or on an assessment, is that it's really all about the story. You can be applying all of those strategies and skills that you use to read your own stories when you're coming across these problems. And one of the most important strategies is to visualize what is happening in the problem. In other words, you should be having some sort of a movie playing in your head as you're reading the story. So you should be thinking about and visualizing all those events that are happening. And the next thing is this. You should be asking yourself as you read and reread the problem, what information is given to me, and what do I still need to figure out? My friend Megan went to the store to buy 215 donuts for her breakfast party. Now already in my head I'm thinking of what donuts look like. Each plate at the bakery counter held 6 donuts. How many plates will she need to buy? Good, so not only am I thinking 215 donuts, but I'm also thinking plates. So I'm kind of getting some sort of a visual like this in my head. Here's a plate, and it's holding 6 donuts, just like it tells me in my story. Now the next thing I really need to do is figure out what information is the story giving me. And I can do that just by going in with my pencil and circling the important information. So since we're thinking math, I'm going to go straight for my numbers. My friend Megan went to the store to buy 215 donuts. So I'm going to circle that 215 because it seems really important. Each plate at the bakery counter held 6 donuts. There's another number. So right now I've got 2 sets of numbers that I know are going to be important to solving my problem. And here's what they're asking me to figure out. How many plates will she need to buy? Okay, so I've got a lot of my information already given to me, but I do have to figure something out because they are asking me a question. The next important step for me to do is figure out what these numbers really mean. So she went to the store and she wanted to buy 215 donuts. So I know that that 215 stands for the total number of donuts she wanted to buy. So I'm just going to mark it in just like that so I can keep my information straight. And as I continue to read, I know that the 6 donuts is important, but I have to sort of back up and reread to figure out what it actually means. Each plate at the bakery counter held 6 donuts. So there's that word each again. And using my math brain, I know that usually when I say each plate, I know that I'm talking about a group of donuts, right? Because each plate at the bakery counter held 6 donuts. So I know that that 6 actually stands for the number in each group. The next step for me would be to set up some sort of a checklist. And you can do this on your own as well, just on any old piece of paper. So look at the items on my list. I have total, number in each group, and then the number of groups. And it's just a way for me to keep track of what information the story problem is giving me. So what I'm going to do is just go through and figure out what exactly I have from the actual story problem. Okay, so I do have the total, right? And I know the total is 215. So I'm just going to write the 215 right here in my chart to keep track. And let's see, number in each group. It looks like I figured out the number in each group, so I'm going to check that off as well. And I'm going to put down 6. Now, in this particular chart, it's not really necessary for me to write 6 donuts or 215 donuts because the numbers are what are really important to solve the problem. As long as I still have that visual in my head, I should know that I'm talking about donuts. Now, let's look at this last one, number of groups. I see that I don't have that written anywhere, so I'm going to go back and reread my question to see if I still need to figure this out. It says, how many plates will she need to buy? Now, since I know that each plate held 6 donuts, I can kind of assume that the how many plates is really asking me how many groups, How many groups of donuts will she need to buy? So in this case, it looks like that is still what we need to figure out what to do with this information. Because really, I know I need to use some sort of operation to get there. So when I first look here, I see that I have a total of 215. And since I know the total, my brain is thinking, and I know I'm either going to have to use division or subtraction. Because when we divide, we're given our total. And when we subtract, we're also given our total. But I haven't narrowed it down enough yet, so let's keep looking and see what else we can figure out. The other piece of the information I know is that we hear something about groups in this problem, right? So I'm automatically thinking I'm definitely going to use division, because when I'm thinking about subtraction, I don't really talk about groups that much, right? So I'm already thinking, okay, I'm going to set up my equation. So I need to have my total, 215, divided by 6, which was the number of donuts in each group. This shouldn't be very new to you because we have been working on division, but just to give you the heads up, I did take my equation and I made it look a little bit different. I decided to set it up in the house because it's easier for me to keep track and to make accurate, efficient choices as a mathematician. So remember, I need to set up my multiplication on the right-hand side, and underneath my house I'll be keeping track of my subtraction. So my first step is to figure out how close I can get to that 215. Since it's somewhat of an unknown multiple for me, I decided just to get as close as possible. And remember, I'm going to use those friendly numbers as factors. My first choice as a mathematician is to use 6 times 30, because I know 6 times 3 will get me 18, so 6 times 30 will get me to 180, which you can see is a pretty efficient jump, and it doesn't go over my 215. So I have to go over and keep track, and when I subtract 180 from 215, I end up with 35. So I can still go a little further because that 35 is a pretty big number left over. So my next step will be to get as close to the 35 as possible. I chose to do 6 times 5 because I know 6 times 5 equals 30, and that's pretty close to the 35. Okay, so I do 35 minus 30, and I know it will get me to 5. So girls and boys, knowing my division skills are pretty good, I remember that that 5 is smaller or less than my 6. In other words, I can't make a group of 6 out of 5, so that's going to end up being my remainder. So over here I need to add up all of my factors. I end up with 6 times 35 equals 210. So now what I do is put my quotient at the top, which ends up being 35, and then I have a remainder of 5. Now, girls and boys, as we've said in class, it's important to remember that we're not done solving once we get here. Because with a story problem, there's always a question attached, right? So it's important for me to remember what exactly was the question, right? And the way I can figure that out is by going back and rereading my story problem. In this particular one, the question was, how many plates will she need to buy? So, girls and boys, if I look back and I remember that I did 35, right, times 6, there are my 6 donuts, and it got me to 210 because I had a remainder of 5. Now, knowing that she needs 215 donuts, I know this is not enough. What would end up happening would be 5 people would not have a donut, and if they're anything like me, they'd be pretty upset about that. So, what I need to think about is what am I going to do with that remainder? In this particular question, I'm going to say that Megan will need to buy 36 plates of donuts. She'll need to buy an extra plate to get those 5 extra donuts. So there we go. We've now solved a story problem together by visualizing and by really figuring out what information is given to us and what we need to find out. Pause the video and try this on your own using these two strategies, and then we'll see how you did. Good luck! Alright, so if you've gotten to this point in the video, it means that you solved the story problem on your own using these two strategies, and you felt pretty confident with it, and now you want to just double check to see how you did. So let's do that together. The first thing that you did was you pulled out those important pieces of information, which usually involves the numbers, right? And the question, what they're asking you to figure out. And your next step was you put it in some sort of a chart like this to figure out what information is given and what do you need to figure out. And looking at this particular problem, we know that we're looking for the total number of pencils that the fourth grade classes have. We know that the number in each group are 12 pencils, and that the number of groups in this particular problem is 62 students, right? So we're looking for the total. We have 12 pencils in each group, and we know that the number of groups is 62. So with that information, since we know the number in each group and the number of groups, you should really be thinking multiplication, right? Because you're looking for your total or your product. So in this particular case, we're going to multiply these two factors together. And it may look something like this on your own paper, right? So you have 62 times 12. And then, as you can see, I decided to use my knowledge of the distributive property to solve accurately and efficiently. So I did 60 times 10, right? I distributed over to the other factor. Then I did 60 times 2. Then I did my other digit, 2 times 10, as well as 2 times 2, right, in the last expression. After you solve for those expressions, which I did here, then you need to find the sum of all of these products. And that would have gotten you closer to your answer statement. And the answer statement in this particular problem would be the fourth grade classes will have 744 pencils. And remember, the number, the total, comes from all of your math work up here, but the actual answer statement comes from the question, right? Borrow words from the question to come up with your answer statement. So how did you do? If you feel like you need to watch it again because you made a couple of mistakes, please feel free to pause the video and kind of go back a little bit. But remember to just follow the same steps that we worked on. Help you to solve any story problem that you come across, whether in school or at home or in an assessment or anything. And the first step is to remember to visualize the events in the story. Okay, even though it's a story problem, it's a story first, right? So there should be some sort of a movie playing in your head so you can kind of get a handle on what's actually going on. And the next piece of it is sort of the math piece, right? Ask yourself, what information did they give me? And what do I need to find out? And today we used a little bit of a checklist to help us keep track of that information, which, as you found out, is very easy to set up on your own and keeps that information in a good and organized space for you to solve the problem. Okay, so I hope that you found this helpful, and you can use these helpful hints for the next time you come across a story problem on your own. And until next time, keep thinking, mathematicians.